Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've recorded meetings and conventions here in Southern California since 1998. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994, and I got sober in a small town called Santa Maria. I moved to Los Angeles when I had 5 years sober and started recording meetings shortly after I got here. In 2013, I started recording conventions. So please enjoy the channel. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Just click right down there. Thank you.
Thank you, Larcene, for sharing with us. And now I'd like to introduce our AA speaker, Cubby S. Welcome, Cubby.
Story of my sex life. My name is Cubby Selby. I'm an alcoholic. I'm delighted to be here. It's a beautiful day and a lot of marvelous people. It's always exciting to see a couple of hundred drunks sitting up. Even walking on their own hind legs from time to time. I love speaking at AA meetings. I love reliving the experience of having alcohol kill me and remembering how it first saved my life and then finding out that I never lived and slowly learning how. I don't do too well sometimes. This thing called life. It's one of the reasons I love alcohol so much. I really think alcohol is a gift of the gods. You know, it's not a coincidence that the word spirit means God and it means booze. Because drinking's a spiritual experience for fractured, alienated, guilty people like myself. It is just so marvelous. You know. God does all the wonders of 50 years in the Himalayas can do, chanting and meditating. God, 2 drinks and we are so lucky to be so sick. You know, unlike most people in this room, however, I never drank in high school and I never drank in college. I never went to high school and I never went to college. But, you know, I found out that you don't have to go to school to learn how to drink. I'm a self-made drunk. You know, I earned it. I got here the old-fashioned way. I just drank myself to death. I left home at 15 because I wanted to find out what was going on. I knew that would make a difference. Because I could never live comfortably inside my body. You know, and I could never live in this world. It was always, as a youngest child, was antithetical to everything I ever believed in or wanted or desired. I just always felt like the battleground of the hounds of heaven and the hounds of hell. And I always had something tightening up, and I had rats and maggots chewing at me, and I was always a scream looking for a mouth. I just couldn't stand it. And I was never felt a part of anything. I was always a fringer. I was always on the outside, you know, looking in, and I could never feel integrated with anything at all, and I had a profound sense of loneliness and despair and guilt. And then I have a drink, you know. And drinking appeared to change everything. By the time that second drink is floating around in what's left of this body, all those billions of little parts of Cubby that are struggling in this rotten, vile, hostile universe, they suddenly start fluttering around like butterflies, and they start singing like nightingales and mockingbirds, la-di-da, la-di-da, and they kind of gently fall together like snowflakes in a windless day, and I just become a holy man. I am whole, I am solid, I'm unified. and I have a sense of peace that I never knew existed. Oh, can you remember? And suddenly life is worth living. And you know it's possible. It's possible to make it, to do it. Whatever it is possible. Oh. And then some fool comes along and says, hey man, you shouldn't drink. Yeah. Hey, mango maga. I mean, you have to be kidding. I mean, it's true that I have a very violent, vicious personality, and I black out sometimes before the first drink. You know? I tend to be intense. And, you know, I try to kill you or chase you in my automobile right into your living room if I can get up the stairs. I'm willing to concede that my drinking is possibly a problem for you. However, it is still the only answer I ever found to life. It is the answer to all the problems of living. I can believe the grand illusion. It is all right. So I cannot accept that I'm powerless over alcohol. And I have to defend my right to drink. And yet, when I was 18 years old, I was taken off a ship in Germany, and they said I couldn't live more than 2 months. I had TB, and both lungs were completely shot. There was nothing left but an oil slick. And about 2 weeks before this day, we left New York, and we were at sea a day or two, and I started to hemorrhage. And I hemorrhaged constantly. 24 hours a day I was bleeding. I had the chills so bad, I'd wrap up in a jacket, and I'd stand by the boilers, and I'd shiver. And when I went to bed, I sweat right through the mattress. And when I got up to go on watch, there was a pool of sweat on the deck under my mattress. So it was evident I wasn't in the very best of condition, you know. However, that does not interfere with our drinking, all right? It's a mere bagatelle. A week before I was taken off the ship, we went into Antwerp, and to go into Antwerp, you go through a canal and a series of locks. In this one lock, there was a wine shop a short distance from the canal. And I gathered up some money, and I ran to this wine shop. I got all the wine I could carry, and I ran back to the ship with no lungs. And some people have the nerve to say, we have no willpower. Yeah, come on, man. Walking on water is a piece of cake for a drunk if there's a drink at the other end, right? Now, why do we have willpower? Yeah. And I thought I did that because I wanted to. I had no concept of powerlessness, or addiction, or obsession. I thought anybody would do something like that. I had no concept of all that. I had a disease called alcoholism. And I couldn't accept that my life was unmanageable because if I did, I'd have to examine why. And again, I'd get back to the drinking, and my drinking would be threatened. Yet by the time I was 22 years old, I'd spent more than 3 years in the hospital. Most of that time in bed. I had 10 ribs cut out, a lung collapse, a piece of the other lung cut out, and they had used an experimental drug to keep me alive, and it impaired my vision and my hearing, and it almost totally destroyed my inner ear, and I couldn't walk properly, and I'd fall down in the dark, and all my muscles were petrified from this drug. And then things started to get bad. And that's a guarantee we have as drunks. No matter how bad things appear to be, a drink will make it worse. You know, that's a flat-out guarantee. Now, the third chapter says that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves, or alcoholics, the first step in recovery. Now, I've known this all my life. I was born knowing that my innermost self. But because alcohol is my only answer to the problems of living, I must keep this information away from me. You know, I can't be aware of knowing this. So I build up a belief system of lies to defend my right to drink. Now, one of the things I did to defend my right to drink was use heroin. And I became addicted to heroin. And I don't recommend that as a means of sobriety. However, for the 6 years that I was strung out, I didn't drink much. And that proved conclusively to me that I'm not an alcoholic. How can I be an alcoholic? When I got sober, I had to re-examine that part of my life, and I had to eventually concede that there is the possibility that when you're shooting $100 a day worth of heroin, you don't need to drink too much. But I didn't look at it that way at the time. It just proved I wasn't an alcoholic. Now, I checked into a hospital a few times in New York, and I tried to kick this thing, and I couldn't. Now, the second step says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, which obviously implies that we're nuts. And what I did was I left New York and I moved to Hollywood to get away from drugs. And I was just as sincere then as you are now. And it worked by courtesy of the LA Sheriff's Department. They put a .357 Magnum to my head and said, "We care." And naturally, later on, the judge said, "Keep coming back." So did the connection, now that I think about it. Anyway, what they did, they strapped me down in solitary, and I kicked my habit. And it's kind of the no-frills approach to kicking a habit. I mean, it was the easiest off the way, I guess. And I knew I was going to die because I tried kicking in a hospital, and I couldn't. And I was just so tired, I really didn't care. And 3 days later, I was afraid I wasn't going to die. I started to get very uncomfortable. After a week, they asked me if I wanted to come out, and I said no. I felt so safe in there. I can't tell you, man. It's like 30 square feet and nothing to do. I didn't have to make any decisions. I stayed in there a month. They finally kicked me out. I was dispossessed, and they put me with the rest of the population. And I was there a month, and a lawyer came up and bailed me out and put me in a hospital for a month. So I had 90 days without a drink and just a couple of Placidil in the hospital. And then they did it to me. There's something about them. They are always waiting until you're settled in and know that at last your troubles are over. And then they chortle and chuckle and give it to you, And what they did was they turned me loose. And I was not only out in this world that I've never understood, that baffles me, that terrifies me, but I hadn't had a drink for 90 days. And I was totally incapable of crossing the street. And I had a very difficult time trying to hide my panic and fear and terror with belligerence and hostility. And the only way I could get across the street was if I was going to get a drink. Without that motivation, I couldn't walk the streets. So I spent the next 15 months sitting in a green office chair, emotionally involved with Ernest and Julio Gallo. And I had to believe that everything was okay. I was living with a young lady at the time who sent a woman home with 3 children because they had no place to live. The welfare people had told this woman that if she didn't have a place to live by that night, they'd take her children away. So they moved in with us, and I wasn't where I was, and they were where they were. And this guy used to come and visit this lady. And one Friday night, he came and he visited with me. As I say, I'm a blackout drinker, so I don't remember more than perhaps a total of 30 seconds of the entire evening. But I remember him coming into the room, and I remember him sitting down. I remember him taking paper out of his pocket. Today, I assume they were pamphlets, and he read to me, but I have no idea from my direct recall. I do remember, however, that he did not drink my wine. That I remember absolutely. It's what you call selective memory. And he evidently read to me from these papers. The next thing I recall is he tossed a book in my lap and he said, "You read to me, I'm tired." So I did. And I picked up this book, and the image I have is I put it on the table, and I read to him, and I would stop after every line. I'd say something like, "Holy shit, look at that. Well, I'll be goddamn. Oh, hey, that's right, man." I read this thing to him, and I gave it my stamp of approval, you see. And it turned out in this gray out, I read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I'm sure I didn't read all 164 pages of the text, because I used to take frequent naps in those days, But evidently, I read enough to identify with the problem and to recognize the answer, because he took me to a meeting the following night, and I've been sober ever since. And that was the 29th of March, 1969. Now, 2 things happened that first night that forced me to believe something of extreme comfort. This was a big meeting, a couple of 100 people, 2 hours long, and I raged at everything I heard. My head was screaming. Yet, when he took me home, I heard myself say, "Can I go to another meeting?" Now, I had no intention of saying that, believe me. As a matter of fact, I've come to suspect I did not say that. I didn't say that. Yet those words came out of my mouth. And he said yes, and as I say, I've been sober since. So I'm forced to believe that miracles are possible without my consent. And I am so delighted to know that. You know, given the nature of my personality, you can rest assured I will forever be at the airport waiting for my ship to come in, you know. But I don't have to consent to the miracle of my life. I can, of course, walk away from it. I can do anything I choose to it, but I don't have to consent to it. In the second chapter of our book, it says in their personal stories, each individual tells in his own words, from his own point of view, how he established his relationship with God. And that, of course, is the single most important thing in our lives. Over and over we are told that lack of power is our dilemma. We must find a power greater than ourselves. We are also told we are never cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition, not our religious condition, not our psychological condition, not our financial condition, but simply our spiritual condition. So I'd like to share with you how I have received what I consider the 5 most important gifts of my life as a direct result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I say I received these gifts, I don't mean I was given something here that I did not have when I got here, because I know absolutely that I was given everything there is at the day of creation. However, because of this belief system of lies, I am not aware of having these gifts. When I stop drinking, my problems aren't over. I'm left with that problem I started with. And I'm also left with that belief system that I developed. And that's what this program, one of the things this program does for me. It allows me to identify and recognize the lies that I have been believing all my life and be willing to let them go. And if I do that, then obviously the more I let go of these lies, the more I live in truth. But I don't search for truth. I wouldn't recognize the bloody thing. But if I'm honest enough, I can recognize the lies I have been believing in order to justify taking the first drink. So that's what I'm working with today, that belief system. And that's why I'm unaware of having these gifts that I was given at the day of creation. But through this program, these gifts are revealed to me in such a way that I can recognize them and utilize them one day at a time for the rest of my life. And those gifts are the gift of sobriety, the gift of recovery, the gift of prayer, the gift of love, and the gift of a God of my very own. Now, I was given the gift of sobriety that first night. I was rendered sober, and I have been unable to drink since that night. For me, drinking is not a choice. It's either removed or it's not. I can't decide or choose whether or not I drink. For me, the decision is, will I put sobriety first in my life? That's my choice. I don't drink no matter what. And that's the choice I make. And the way I put sobriety first is by making Alcoholics Anonymous my life. Everything else revolves around Alcoholics Anonymous. There is no separation in my life. My life is one unit. My life is what I have through Alcoholics Anonymous, and it has given me the means to take care of the other aspects that are involved in this thing called living. So I was rendered sober, and I didn't drink for 30 days. It was 30 horrendous, miserable, hideous days. I didn't, you know, as we all know, the only thing worse than drinking is not drinking, you know. You take away the most important thing in someone's life, you must replace it with something of value. Nature cannot and will not accept a vacuum. And alcohol had become the most important thing in my life. Not through desire, not through intent, not through design, but by the very nature of my illness. I am powerless over alcohol. So if you don't replace alcohol with something of value, I must drink. There is no choice in the matter. Not a case of willpower or ethics or morality. I must drink. And I believe that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is that something of value that fills that hole and fulfills every need I shall ever have for the rest of my life. So after 30 days of not drinking, I was stark raving sober, and I asked for help. And I asked for help at an AA meeting, and the help was instantly and automatically there. I didn't understand why at the time, but the reason is simply that the answer is in the asking. It's that simple and that obvious. And it's like everything else I've learned here. It's so simple and so obvious that I can't see it. You know, it's like that little fish that swam around through the oceans of the entire world looking for water. It's just, it's always there, but I can't see it. It's impossible to have a problem without already having the answer. It's a spiritual impossibility to have a problem, no matter how you perceive it. It's impossible to have a problem without already having the answer. But I still have that belief system of lies that effectively cuts me off from the answer. But the answer is in the asking. So I come up to you and say, I give up. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. And instantly the answer is available to me from within myself. Instantly, because I've surrendered. And as you share with me what you did at that point in your sobriety, you make it possible for me to recognize the answer in whatever way I need to stay sober for the next 24 hours. So after 30 days, I asked for help, and I was given the gift of recovery. Excuse me, may I have that? I thought I'd ask for water. Right after that part we read in chapter 5, it says, having been convinced, we are now at step 3. And that's a sticky wicket for somebody like me, because the kindest thing I ever said about God is that it's dog spelled backwards. After my last operation, I was in a coma for 4 days, and at some point in that period, I opened my eyes as a chaplain walked in the room. And I stayed conscious long enough, maybe 3 seconds, just long enough to shake my head no and watch him leave, because I was determined that if I died, I was going to die giving God the finger. And if there was such a thing called God, I couldn't wait to die so I could meet it and spit in its face. Some people call that an attitude. I don't know. Now, AA is the only place I know where you can bring an attitude like mine, which I guess could be defined as hostile, right? And have it turned into a love affair. Not by going to church, not by taking religious instructions or studying theology or dogma or metaphysics or psychology, but by not taking one drink, 1 day at a time, and hanging out with a bunch of sober drunks. And that's exactly what happened to me. And it seemed like everywhere I went, 3,000 people were saying, you have to pray, you have to pray. I didn't know what to do about this thing. For some reason, I thought now I lay me down to sleep wouldn't work. Today I know it would have. It wouldn't have made any difference. It would have worked just as well as anything else. But what I did, I copied the third step prayer and the St. Francis prayer, and I tacked them on the wall. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd read them, and I'd go about my business, and I'd come home and I'd sit on the side of the bed and I'd read them again and go to sleep. Then it seemed like everybody was saying you have to kneel and pray, you have to get on your knees. And I tried it. 20 or 30 times a day I would try and kneel, and I couldn't do it. It was as if my knees were locked, and it was impossible. When I was sober 4 months, I took my 5th step. When I finished, my sponsor showed me the pages in the book to read, and they give you the instructions for taking steps 6 and 7. I went home and I did exactly as the book suggests. And when I had taken the 6th step, I was made aware of it. And I've come to believe that the essence of the 6th step is simply that when no value is seen in suffering, healing is instantaneous. Everyone I know is willing to give up the pain of a defect. But when you suggest to them they give up the pleasure, they're gone. You know? They never call you again. If you're getting too many calls and you can't handle them, I guarantee that's the way to stop people from calling a second time. If they keep calling with relationship problems and the pain that this woman has given them, tell them to give up the pleasure of sex. They'll never call you back, you know. Never. Don't worry about it. You know, I'm willing to give up that terror of waking in the middle of the night not knowing who I may have killed, where I am, and then having to face the consequences of that dreadful blackout. But I'm not willing to give up the pleasure of the lie that I get when I take the drink finally that next day. But when no value is seen in suffering, healing is instantaneous. So when I had taken the 6th step, I was made aware of it. Without thinking, it was a totally thoughtless and spontaneous action. I was on my knees taking the 7th step. And that day I was given the gift of prayer. The book says, many of us may have had spiritual beliefs, but now we find we are having a spiritual experience. And a belief is a great place to start from. But how long does a belief keep you going without the experience? I can believe anything I want about alcohol, but until I experience the wonders that it does for me and the horrors that it does to me, what do I really know about it? But after the 5th step, this belief starts to become an experience. And with this gift of prayer, this belief becomes a living reality, and we feel this thing, this presence, this power hold us and rock us to sleep and breathe the breath of life in us and comfort us when the only thing I can do is spit in its face and call it every rotten, vile name I can think of. And it just holds me and rocks me and says, Cubby, you are all right. Never tells me you will be all right, because that would just get me deeper in the problem. The answer is very simple. I am all right, because right now everything is perfect. Right now I don't have to drink. Right now there is nothing to fear. And it just holds me and rocks me and tells me, Cubby, you are healed. And as soon as I let go of my self-pity and rage, I experience the simple truth of those statements. Right now I am all right. I believe that the most I can ask for with words when I pray is to receive what is already given, to accept what is already there. Because I know from my direct experience in prayer that there is nothing to get, there is only everything to give. And I believe AA is the perfect place to give everything away. I also know from my direct experience in prayer that I don't pray to God, that there's nothing out there to pray to, that I pray from God to God. And for me, it just proves again from my experience that whatever it is I think I'm praying to is what I'm praying from. And I believe the real healing prayer is that song of love that our heart sings to God. And I believe God sings a song of love to us. I believe that song is heard in every heart throughout the world and is heard throughout the entire universe. I believe it's that song of love that mends the broken hearts and heals the sick minds that we bring to AA. And I believe each and every one of us gets here with a broken heart. I believe we spent a lifetime trying to fix something and we just couldn't do it. And no matter what we got rid of, no matter what we achieved, no matter what we had, there was at best a vague sense of discontent inside. I believe there's at least one thing every drunk has always wanted, and that's more. We just could never be content where we were with what we had. And I believe the reason for that is this broken heart. And I believe this song of love mends the broken hearts and heals the sick minds that we bring to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know that with the 11th step, we not only sit and hear this song of love, but experience the simple truth that we are God's song of love. And there's only one song. There is only one song, and we are the song. And it's a joy to listen to it. With the 9th step, I was given the gift of love. When I was sober 6 months, I became aware of the fact that I had fallen in love with this thing you call God. Up to this point in my life, I had been given up for dead 3 times in the hospital, and I have no idea how many times in the street. And I thought the only thing that kept me alive was what I thought was my hatred for God. And yet in 6 months with you people, I had fallen in love with this thing. and I didn't understand it. But as time went along, I understood some things about my attitude. And first time I read AA Comes of Age, it explained a lot to me. In the back of that book, they quote an old Spanish philosopher. Just a couple of words. And the words are, "Those who deny God deny him because of their despair at not finding him." When I read that for the first time, I instantly understood everything. Just in the wink of an eye, I understood everything. And since then, I've been in the process of learning it. And then in time, I've come to realize something about that attitude and my relationship with this power. All my life, I was searching for something I thought I had lost. Something I wanted more than anything else in the world. Something I wanted more than life itself. And I could never find it. I looked and I looked and I looked and I couldn't find this thing. So in time, I had to believe that I couldn't have it. For whatever reason, I couldn't have it. And then I had to believe that it wasn't worth having in the first place. And eventually I had to believe that it didn't even exist. And it turns out that the truth is, this cosmic joke, that this thing that I searched for so desperately, that I wanted so much, this thing that I believed I could never have, it turns out that it's the only thing I can never be without. And again, my experience proves to me that whatever it is I think I'm looking for is what I'm looking with. And as simply as possible, it's simply God looking for God. And I'm right in the middle. I'm a sandwich. I'm a God sandwich. Take a bite, baby. And so with that 9th step, I was given the gift of love. With the 12th step, we have the most magnificent guarantee any human being can have. Can't smell that stuff on your breath either. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. And again, it doesn't say a religious awakening or psychological awakening or anything. It says a spiritual awakening. And in the second appendix of our book, they take a page and a half to talk about spiritual awakening, spiritual experience. And again, it's no big thing. This is no big deal. It's very simple. It's very obvious. But at the same time, it's elusive because I still have this belief system of lies. And information tends to get filtered through the lies. And I have to try and discern what is real and what's an illusion. But they talk about a personality change sufficient to recover from the disease of alcoholism. They talk about tapping into an unsuspected inner source of power. And the book tells us that ultimately the only place we'll find the great reality is deep within ourselves. Among other things, the word spirit simply means essence. The Latin root is spirite, and it means breath. We're simply dealing with the essence of life, the breath of life. And it's within us, within us. So with the 12th step, I become aware of the Spirit of God within me. And it doesn't say that this may or it may not happen. It's a flat-out guarantee. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result. It's the only result we're working for, the only thing we're looking towards, and it has to happen. Obviously, you cannot take spiritual actions without having a spiritual result. Now, you can deny it's happened if you want to. You can call it by 37 other names, but you cannot take the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous without having a spiritual awakening. It is spiritually impossible. So I become awakened to the simple truth that the Spirit of God is within me, and the Spirit of God and the Spirit of Cubby are one. And the only thing standing between me and full and total realization of my oneness with God is this thing we call the human ego. And as I practice the principles of this program, I become increasingly free of the ego and increasingly aware of my oneness with God. Excuse me. And so at the, Gadzooks. And so at the 12th step, I'm given this really, really precious gift, a God of my very own. Not somebody else's concept of God, not some institution's concept of God, and not my concept of God, but a power that has revealed itself to me from within me as a direct result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And no matter where I go, I am never without this presence. You can't separate cause and effect. So I can't separate God the cause and Cubby the effect. Wherever I am, all of God is. Wherever you are, all of God is. And it's the most fantastic thing, because when we greet each other and we look in each other's eyes and we're aware of sobriety, we're aware of what was, we're aware of what is, and it's God reaching out to God each and every time. You see, healing occurs when minds are joined together in a single thought. And that's one of the reasons we keep telling new people, just bring the body, the mind will follow. Because we're all here for one basic reason. A lot of us may have some other reasons, but there's one basic reason. We want to stay sober. And our minds are joined in that simple, single thought. So just bringing the body will affect the healing, as long as we can just keep coming back and keep coming back. As the book says, selfishness and self-centered fear is at the core of our problem. And by the time we're ready to try AA, there's nothing but the eye of our disease. And we're totally insulated and isolated in the eye of our disease. And we get here, and the very first word of the program is we. You know, it is so marvelous. We admitted. Lack of power is our dilemma, but when we come together and admit our powerlessness, the power that created and maintains the universe is available to us, through us, and for us, just with that simple admission. And that's not a metaphor, that's a very simple statement of fact. Instantly, the unconditional love of the we of Alcoholics Anonymous starts to chip away at the eye of our disease. I believe the most important thing I have ever learned in my entire life, the most important thing that I ever will learn, the most important thing I know is I get drunk, we stay sober. And that's just about as profound as my life is. I get drunk and we stay sober. And at the end of the meeting, something happens that I believe precipitates an ongoing phenomenon that is absolutely exquisite. At the end of the meeting, the people stand and they reach out and they hold our hand. And this is what they say. They say, our Father. Can you dig it, man? I mean, they don't say, like, my Father. I got mine. It's in my hip pocket. Our Father. And, people like myself who get here so terrified that we're wrapped up in rage and belligerence for the first time in years or perhaps forever, we're included in this thing called life. We're included in this thing called love. Because the people here have already made the great discovery within themselves. And they share that discovery with us until we, in our time and in our way, make the great discovery within ourselves. And that has to happen. That has to happen. When I got here, I didn't know I had a disease. I thought I was the disease. But you saw past the appearance of my illness. You did not judge me by appearances. Beyond that drunken, crazed beast, you saw a sober being. Within that sober being, you saw light and you saw love. And you held that image of me in your mind as you nurtured me and loved me and allowed me to make every mistake I need to make in order to learn what I must learn to stay sober for the next 24 hours.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
And more, as I come back to these meetings, I am becoming that image that you have of me, as you are becoming the image I have of you. And together we are becoming the image God has of us. And just before I close, I want to say something that's vitally important, because my sobriety, 7 or 8 years of it, half of it, whatever, has been more painful than any years of my drinking. I lost everything in sobriety. And this is the thing I really want to talk about. Everybody that I know of has an image in their mind of the right person. We all want to meet the right person to spend our life with and grow old with. And 20 years ago, I met that person. And after 15 years, she left, because my behavior, the rage and hatred that was coming out of me in sobriety, was so overwhelming it threatened her sobriety and it threatened her life. And when she left, I heard sobbing and crying come out of me that I never heard come out of a human being in my life. And it came from some place so deep within me, I didn't know that place existed until that day. Because I love her from that place. It has nothing to do with the body. It has nothing to do with my mind. I don't know where that place is. But my love for her is in that place, and she loves me totally and unconditionally the same way. But she had to leave, and that's 5 years ago that she left. And our son, who was 12, elected to stay with me. And because of an ongoing illness I had for many years, we didn't have any money. But anyway, we came back here, he and I we stayed with a friend. And because this breakup happened in Massachusetts. And I accepted full responsibility for the breakup of this marriage. And there wasn't any resentment involved at that time. And we were out here a while, and she called and said she was in love with somebody else. And by that time, there was like such a profound emptiness. There was no greater sense of loss, because there was nothing left to lose. And I was praying for her one morning as part of my thing that I do in the morning, and something happened. You know, there are times when you just let go and you become the prayer, and space and time no longer exist. And I heard myself saying something that for me was unusual, because I've gone through broken relationships and the intense hostility and rage and anger that follows, and all those murderous, vicious thoughts. But this time what happened is I heard myself thanking God that she had someone to love, that she had someone to share her life with, someone to share her God with, someone to share her body with, someone to share her program with. And it precipitated the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life. And I've thought about that experience, and for me, it can be summed up in a few words that was spoken many moons ago. And for me, it kind of explains and epitophizes and describes what happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. The line is simply that he who dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God dwelleth in him. And I believe that's the process that we have here in Alcoholics Anonymous. We get involved with each other's personality. We have problems like any human being. However, we are always willing to do anything we can to help anyone stay away from the first drink. Now, I believe that I've always been a loving human being, but I was out of touch with the reality of my own being because of the decisions I made to affect my experience in reality. But I drank myself to death after doing every rotten, hideous thing I could possibly do. And you didn't ask me anything. You just let me sit here, and more important than anything else, I believe, is that you lived a life of love. Now, you may have left here and you may have robbed a bank, and I really don't care. But you loved me, and something inside of me recognized that. And as I recognized the actions of love within you and the light of love in your eyes, I realized that it's me too. And then you gave me the opportunity to give it back to you. Today, I'm a free man because I found that freedom only comes from accepting full and total responsibility for my experience in life. And you have shown me how to do that. You have shown me how to be free. You have shown me how to love you by your example of loving me. And today I know that I am a loving, caring, and beautiful human being. And I want to thank God for AA, and I want to thank Alcoholics Anonymous for my God. But I really want to thank you for my life. Thanks.
Thank you, Cubby, for sharing with us. We had 17 new members today and 18 renewals. Okay, I'm shaking it. We have the door prize now. Would you like to choose? Reach down. Reach down. Kind of big. It's Robert Gibson, number 245. Is that you? Gosh, Incidentally, Bob is not a board member. There weren't any other. There weren't any chairs available, so Bob was sitting up there. I don't want you to think it was fixed. I want to thank you all for being here. And gee, the sun started to shine out there since we came in, and I'd like to thank Cubby and Larcene for bringing a lot of sunshine into this room this morning. There are tapes available. Paul, would you stand? There are tapes of this meeting today, and Paul will be able to give you the information on that. And now, after a moment's meditation, whoever would like to join us, I'd like to ask Don G. to lead us in the Lord's Prayer.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Keep coming back. It works.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control is connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.